So Pokemon. Everyone likes Pokemon. Everyone knows their attacks can only knock each other out. Moves like lightning or flamethrower don't really hurt anyone, you know? Well, imagine if in Pokemon the first movie, every Pokemon attack now had brutal, devastating consequences, resulting in these little guys getting horribly injured, or worse. Worldwide, audiences of children watch in terror as Squirtle, Charmander, and Bulbasaur are killed off in seconds, all to make room for the new starters. Imagine if Pikachu flatlined on a hospital bed. That's Transformers the movie. I've talked about every live-action Transformers movie. It was a long road, a lot of Michael Bay shenanigans, many explosions, robot dismemberment, perhaps even a state felony or two. This was a series that crashed and burned. It's only now slowly making its way out of the ashes again. Where Transformers goes from here, I can't say. Maybe they'll make that Transformers 1 sequel. Hopefully. Perhaps there's that G.I. Joe crossover one day.
Dress got sad.
But those won't really be tied to where this all began. The real focus of the series, Michael Bay. And when it comes to Bay, his journey here is over. He might be a producer, but he'll never make a Transformers movie again. So what else is there to do when there's nothing else to talk about? It's simple. Transformers the movie is not really a movie like people before the 80s thought of movies. It's sort of the first of its kind. This was not a one-off story that happened to take place in the universe, or an adaptation of the show. Transformers the movie was really the grand midpoint in a TV series that lasted 4, but really 3 seasons. When I first started this project, this movie was meant to be the end of a single video that talked about Bumblebee, Rise of the Beasts, and finally, 1986. The non-Michael Bay movies. But, the problem was, the story revolving around 1986 was far too dense to just fit into 1/3 of a video. In fact, it's kind of impossible to just talk about the movie itself, at least without everything else. So this isn't just a video about Transformers the movie. This is a video about Transformers Generation 1. Uh-oh. I love Generation 1.
Oh, I want to go flying again!
Aw, come on!
And it's not like I'm saying things were just the best in Generation 1, like how some Pokemon Gen 1ers are, or how any other fan thinks that the original was the best. Oh no, I never grew up with G1. Remember, my first interaction with Transformers was Blackout going hog wild on a military base. I love Beast Wars. Transformers Animated is basically Ben 10 combined with Teen Titans. And who doesn't love Transformers Prime?
Optimus, you want to see something funny?
No.
The beauty of this franchise is kind of how often it reinvents itself. With that said, G1 is special.
You can't keep me in here, Megatron!
Really just because it tickles different parts of my brain. The blocky character designs, the throw anything at the wall storytelling, the sound design, both music and effects.
I shouldn't have done it! Please don't shoot!
I gotta say, it's kind of strange for me as a millennial man who did not grow up watching this series to fall in love with it as I'm pushing 30. I cannot think of another series that perfectly encapsulates what 10-year-old me would have thought was the coolest thing ever. Don't get me wrong here, I'm not watching this ironically. This isn't a video about how Transformers G1 is so bad it's good. I genuinely love this, flaws and all, and it's my channel, I want to talk about it. G1 is meant to be a cartoon first and foremost. It's intentionally silly at times. Sometimes it's unintentionally funny, but most of the time there's a purpose to what's going on here. There are a lot of really good retrospectives on Generation 1. Videos solely focused on breaking down G1 by people who were actually kids when it first came out.
Decepticons are attacking! Autobots, get him!
This video isn't really for people who originally grew up with G1. Think of this video as a retrospective from someone who grew up with the Bayformer films. Sounds like an absolutely terrible idea, but that's what I'm doing. Season 1 of Transformers was such an innocent time. They were still figuring stuff out. Nothing made sense. Sometimes the Autobots just fly. Yeah, in the early days, the faction whose whole gimmick was turning into cars to go anywhere could fly whenever they wanted.
Any last words?
Why are we even acting like Optimus is in danger here? He literally flew earlier in the episode. In those early days, the whole Autobot-Decepticon war didn't really feel like a war at all. It was like two groups of kids duking it out on the playground. Punches were thrown, knees were scraped, they made up bullshit rules on the spot.
Optimus Prime has been defeated! All Autobots must exile themselves to deeper space!
One side always broke said rules, because they were jerks like that. Hell, you even had one kid always trying to take charge of the gang himself. Season 1 is really enjoyable when you picture it as just a stupid recess fight. My side has dinosaurs now, because dinosaurs are cool. Oh yeah? Well, my side has construction vehicles, and they combine together to beat your dinosaurs. It's truly art. Compared to the size of Season 2, Season 1 is like one long pilot. Each episode laid the groundwork for the characters and their assorted dynamics. Quality may vary. Sometimes the best way to do something is to just do it. Take off even if you crash into the ground. Storylines were very basic. Just the main conflict between the Autobots and Decepticons, like Season 1 of Red vs. Blue. Decepticons try to take Earth's energy and bring it back to Cybertron, and Autobots have to stop them. The conflict wasn't really what made the show special. What made this show special were the characters. In the pilot three-parter More Than Meets the Eye, Optimus Prime sounds a bit different.
You destroy everything you touch, Megatron!
Less stoic. More like a bruiser who's gonna kick your ass. Peter Cullen has told a story about how his brother was the inspiration for Optimus's voice, and how, before he started voicing the character, his brother gave him this advice.
Peter, if you're gonna be a hero, be a real hero. Be strong enough to be gentle.
Strong enough to be gentle. It's such a heartwarming story. It's a great quote. Really embodies everything Prime would come to be. But I can't help but laugh thinking that he heard that advice and then immediately recorded this.
You're old, Megatron. Yesterday's model, ready for the scrap heap!
Imagine if they had stuck with that voice. This version of Optimus would 100% call Megatron a bitch. After the pilot, Prime mellowed out. Not too much though. I'll get to that later on. Season 1 and 2 Prime has some spunk in him. He isn't above throwing out some one-liners here and there.
Amazing. A booby trap that actually catches boobies.
He's the Autobots' big dad. Sure, he's stoic and can get serious at times. He might even beat up the other kid's dad if need be. But that doesn't stop him from playing some hoops, showing interest in what his boys are doing.
And just what does your doohickey do?
Or hell, even catching a wave. This version of Optimus is my favorite. Now, I like all the other versions of Optimus too. He's Optimus in every one. But man, I just really click with the original. His design is classic. Everyone loves blocky Optimus for a reason. But what I love most about this design is his face. He doesn't have one. Two blank eyes, a mouth guard, that's it. So many moments in this show just work because of Optimus's blank stare. You don't need to see a character's mouth to get what they're thinking, you know? So much can be telegraphed with the smallest movements, or just no movement at all. And his mouth guard moves up and down every time he speaks. I love it. It's kind of a lost part of his character. Now, after going through like 100 episodes, I see why nerds freaked out about Optimus having a mouth. It's kind of like Chief removing his helmet. But with that said, I get why Bay gave him a mouth. You see, mainstream audiences, especially in the 2000s, like to see a face. They just do. Sure, the mask can convey emotion, but it's a lot easier for your average Bayformers fan in the late 2000s to get the scene if they see Optimus frown. Plus, it's not like the mask actually went away. It's simply saved for the moments where shit goes down.
Who would you be without me, Prime? Time to find out.
Funnily enough, that transforming mask became a staple in the series going forward, all from something the Bayformer films introduced. They also made another change, like how Bumblebee can't talk.
His vocal processes were damaged in battle.
Every iteration of Bumblebee has done something different with him. He can't talk, he talks too much, he's E.T. but also Herbie, he's lubricating the man. Him not talking was something that 2007 established, and it became a part of his character for a while, even in future series like Transformers Prime. And hey, it worked out. It made Bumblebee even more of a fan-favorite character. Modern audiences ate that shit up. He was cute, but also badass. He was Sam Witwicky's loyal friend / robot dog. Honestly, it was a great use for the character. For a while. Now I'm sick of voiceless Bumblebee. He's become more Pikachu than actual Autobot after 20 years of this. Say what you will about Badassatron, but at least Transformers 1 made the bold choice to never make him shut up. It's kind of refreshing going back to G1, and seeing Bumblebee just be like, a guy. He's the most guy that ever existed.
I remember now. The riverbed in the desert.
That Bumblebee name was really just a name back then. He's Bumblebee because he turns into a VW bug, and he's yellow, and he's small. Other than that, that's it. He talks normally.
This is supposed to be fun?
If everyone else has been at this for years, he's the rookie. It's kind of wild how Bumblebee ended up becoming such a big character because for those first 2 seasons, he wasn't really anything special. The only thing that really made him stand out was that he was good friends to Spike Witwicky. Spike Witwicky and his dad Sparkplug, yes, that is their names, don't worry about it, met the Autobots in the very first episode, when the Decepticons attacked the oil rig they worked on. Why, as a kid who can't even get a driver's license working on an oil rig? It was the 80s. There was no escaping Reaganomics. After being saved by Optimus and the gang, the Witwickies became certified Autobot friends, joining them on occasion for wacky adventures, whether they wanted to or not. Spike in that first season is your standard 80s cartoon human protagonist. Audience surrogate, I guess, in case kids couldn't relate to those interesting, colorful robots. You can't help but just compare Spike and his Bayverse counterpart, Sam. Both are friends with Bumblebee. Both are Witwickies. Both scream like they're getting torn limb from limb. Unlike Sam, Spike is not the main character here at all. He's really just a part of a big ensemble cast. There will be multiple episodes where he just doesn't appear. This is a show called Transformers after all. It's about the Transformers. There are other humans here too, like this kid in a wheelchair. Don't let him fool you though. He's strong enough to tear a floppy disk in half with his bare hands.
Decepticons can learn to make the antimatter. You're too late, Ravage. The information's already been destroyed.
There's Carly, a girl that appears out of nowhere. She's very interested in the Autobots, almost too interested. Like, she just appears and suddenly wants to be their friend. Isn't that a little suspicious? Is she like a spy or something? Nope. She even helps Ironhide sneak into the Decepticon base at the bottom of the ocean. When did the Autobots find out where the Decepticons were hiding? I don't know. It's never brought up again. After this, she becomes a series regular and Spike's girlfriend. Yeah, if that name sounded familiar, it's not a coincidence. It's kind of funny that despite being the second love interest in the Bayverse, Carly's always been here since the beginning. Finally, we get to the most useful human, Spike's mechanic dad, Sparkplug. What a name. Unlike Sam's useless suburban boomer dad who has to chase down his addict wife,
Hey, Professor, I'd do anything for an A.
Sparkplug actually contributes to the story. Being a mechanic and engineer with knowledge of 1980s level technology, he can somehow repair these advanced alien robots. The man's a super genius. That helmet he never takes off must be to hide his gigantic brain. Sparkplug is so important, the Decepticons brainwash him for their master plan. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Just as Spike teams up with Bumblebee, Sparkplug teams up with Wheeljack. And Wheeljack rocks. If you walk away from this video with anything, it's that Wheeljack is an S-tier character.
I think you're gonna eat those words on a silicon wafer.
That first season, he carries the Autobots on his back like Atlas. He's the tech guy. And since he's a robot, in a group of robots, that ability, unsurprisingly, goes a long way.
He's going to explode!
Wheeljack is literally the Jimmy Neutron of the Autobots, with all that comes with that association. Yeah, he'll create an invention that might help out and literally save the day, but he also might make some doodad that'll fuck kill everyone on accident. Sometimes whole episodes are dedicated to Wheeljack's fuck-ups. He made an invention that froze matter in place forever, which of course was captured by Megatron and used against the Autobots. He turned Spike into a robot Frankenstein. Sometimes his creations just explode. There was this one time he went to a museum and saw a bunch of dinosaur skeletons. So his first thought was, I'm gonna make some robot dinosaurs. So he made robot dinosaurs.
Allow me to introduce Grimlock, Slag, and Sludge.
I imagine if someone only saw the Bay movies, this might be quite a shock to them when I say that the Dinobots, one of the most popular characters in the entire franchise, were invented on a whim by Wheeljack, in his garage, because he was bored. There have been many explanations and other iterations on why the Dinobots are dinosaurs, and their origin kinda changes every time, but my favorite is the original one. Why are they dinosaurs? Because dinosaurs are cool. In classic Wheeljack fashion, even that idea backfired horribly.
This switch real rad. Gonna pull. Grimlock, no!
Oh boy, the Dinobots. Arguably the third most recognizable Autobots behind Optimus and Bumblebee. And for good reason. They're awesome. And hilarious. For some reason, Wheeljack built them to be stupid. Like, he just kinda had spare parts in his garage and he just kinda threw them where their brain should be. They're just barely intelligent enough to say words, let alone understand them.
Almost forgot. Me Swoop can transform.
The Dinobots are the wrecking ball for the Autobots. Big, dumb, and they hit hard. And just like a wrecking ball, sometimes they mindlessly swing back at you. They're not harmlessly stupid. Like, these doofuses can be very much a detriment to the Autobots. Like this one time, Megatron just convinces them to betray the Autobots. He tells Grimlock that if he's the biggest and strongest, then he should be in charge. And Grimlock's like, oh shit, you're right.
Me, Grimlock, must lead.
So he tries to straight up kill Optimus. And then another time, they wreck up Autobot headquarters so badly, the gang just drops them off at Dinosaur Island. An island beyond time itself, where the big lugs won't spike insurance rates. Look, there's a lot of Autobots, even in Season 1. And it's best if I just talk about all of them right now. Like, I don't really think I'm gonna be able to later. Ironhide. Classic Ironhide.
Well, I'm tired of sucking their vapor trail.
Despite being one of the main Autobots on screen, Ironhide only really gets an episode to himself. He never really affects the plot that drastically. He's mainly just contributing to the overall battle, reacting to stuff, following Optimus's orders, or relaying orders to others. Ironhide's kind of like air. Everywhere at once, all the time. You kind of forget he's there. His curses towards the Decepticons blend in with all the other noise going on.
Yeah, let's clobber those flying garbage cans.
So let's talk about the red. See, from my perspective, coming from Bayformers, the red's kind of weird to me. Red's a good color, don't get me wrong, but I'm just so used to Ironhide having black paint. That's more of a fitting color for a name like Ironhide. You know? Don't kill me. Plus, there's just so many G1 Autobots that are already some shade of red. Blaster, Chase, Cliffjumper, Cloudraker, First Aid, Gears, Inferno, Lightspeed, Perceptor, Powerglide, Six Gun, and last but certainly not least, Warpath.
How big a path you want? Bam!
Okay.
Though he's kind of a burgundy.
Transform and zoom! Move out!
Because so many characters came out after him, Ironhide's design to me kind of became the generic Autobot, in a way. Like, it's not a bad design, it's just not as memorable. Now the opposite can be said for Ratchet. I think his original red and white design is far better than the modern ambulance we got in the live-action movies. The yellow and green just looks off. There's a reason he sticks with the white and red in every other iteration. Jazz is jazz.
But with all the weapons she has, why would she steal your laser rifle?
Design-wise, the Michael Bay movies really didn't change him that much. And how can ya? No, Megatron, don't! That's the core Autobot group. Or at least the most recognizable. Like, Prowl was there from the start, but he really never did anything. He kinda just existed. A lot of the Autobots are like Prowl, occasionally saying lines, but for the most part they're just relegated to the background. Cliffjumper really grew on me. I was not expecting that. Like, there's an episode where he thinks Mirage is a traitor and is 100% ready to kill him.
Mirage is no longer one of us.
He would have done it too. He would have gunned Pete Davidson down. I like that he's just Bumblebee's design, but red. Thank the toys for that one. And I like Casey Kasem. Kasem voices a few Autobots actually, like Blue Streak, Teletran 1, and Shaggy. It's kind of a shame we never saw Cliff Jumper in Bayformers. Well, we did see him in Bumblebee for that split second. You know, it's kind of a shame we never really had Wheeljack in the Bayformer films either. Imagine this guy making wacky inventions. That would have been fun. What's that? He was in the movies? Oh my god. Oh my god! Decepticon characters could be categorized like a pyramid. At the top 10%, you have the best characters by design and personality in the entire show. Megatron, Soundwave, Shockwave, and who could forget Starscream? Hell, throw in Devastator. Why not? I prefer the green humanoid over the monster with, scrotum. Soundwave. That blocky design, bold colors. He has a squad of little bots that he shoots out as cassettes. He even turns into a regular-sized boombox. I really can't think of another character more representative of Transformers in the 80s. And there's nothing more G1 than mass shifting, which Soundwave does a lot. Transformers should transform in a logical way where all their pieces fit together? Nonsense. Just have Optimus's trailer disappear. Have Megatron shrink to a quarter of his size to be used as a gun. Soundwave is pretty much unrecognizable in the Bay movies. No visor, he has a mouth, doesn't even have a robotic monotone voice.
I understand. No prisoners, only trophies.
They intentionally went out of their way to make him barely resemble the original. They probably just thought it was too goofy. Wouldn't really fit in with all the war crimes. Imagine if Rumble had been in Dark of the Moon. At least Shockwave got his recognizable single eye. Is he purple? No. Does he talk with his smart intellectual accent?
Female.
No. But this is Shockwave. This utter demon. That's just how Shockwave looks on the inside. Megatron in G1 is your classic 80s cartoon villain.
That energy now belongs to us!
He just loves to be a bad guy. Sure, giving him a sympathetic origin is good and all. Every iteration today has given him at least some understandable motivation. From betrayed revolutionary to revolutionary gladiator. Yeah, original Megatron wasn't like that at all. He's just evil for the love of the game. That's not even a joke. Like, there's an episode where some Autobots time travel to the beginning of the war and see how it all began. Like, they see early Megatron, and he's just a dick. He guns down Orion Pax for no reason. Like, just to do it. Optimus Prime only became a Prime because Megatron shot him on a whim. And so the lesson of the episode is that Megatron has just always sucked. He's always been an asshole.
We only store energy here.
That's just what I wanted to hear.
Hell, it's even alluded to that most of the Decepticons never even joined Megatron willingly. He just brainwashed people with a tentacle monster. But even though he's the most evil, he'll still team up with the Autobots from time to time when there's a bigger threat. It's always funny when he does. Look at Optimus just turn him into a little gun. There's really nothing else that goes on in his head. He wears his anger and stupidity on his sleeve, and it backfires on him every time. For being a leader who every week yells for his troops to retreat, they sure are still loyal to him. Until, you know, they aren't.
I need assistance.
How unfortunate.
Starscream's the best character in G1. Hot take, I know. But like, there's a reason everyone loves him so much.
You are either lying or you're stupid.
I'm stupid! I'm stupid!
He's sniveling, a coward, opportunistic, literally the worst sidekick ever. Starscream will use every opportunity to betray Megatron. And I do mean every opportunity, even the bad ones.
Too bad! I guess that makes me the new leader!
You can't even really describe his antics as sneaky or plotting. He isn't sneaky at all. He's very open about wanting to overthrow Megatron. He says it to Megatron's face, often, and loudly. G1 Starscream is a character that you really couldn't make today. And it's not because he says slurs or something. It's more because audiences would just be kind of confused about why Megatron hadn't killed this guy yet, why he lets him just keep getting away with it. For those first 2 seasons, Megatron always forgave Starscream for being openly insubordinate, like allowing the annoying kid to rejoin the lunch table. Except for that one time. Yeah, so Megatron did actually punish Starscream once in G1. It was during the episode Hoist Goes Hollywood. The Decepticons try to steal footage from a movie that has evidence of their misdeeds. Don't ask. Starscream successfully stole the footage, but little did he know that Hollywood has a thing called footage backups.
How was I to know? I did what you told me. I followed your orders. I warned you, Starscream. I'm too valuable to miss this.
Holy shit. I like how Starscream betrays Megatron multiple times and only gets a slap on the wrist. But the moment he forgets the inner workings of the film industry, Megatron fucking rips out his throat. At the end of Season 2, there is another time that Megatron punishes him. Starscream gets banished for trying a coup. But that's really not as funny as Megatron killing him for not being a film nerd. In future iterations, Starscream's little betrayals would have a more permanent effect on the status quo. But in G1, he has the memory of a goldfish. After watching all of these episodes, the funniest thing is that you start to notice Starscream's usually correct, poking holes in Megatron's very obviously flawed plans, like the plan to drill into the center of the Earth and destroy it, while they were still on it. It's okay, we have a portal. Uh-oh. You kinda come to realize that even though he's cowardly and deceitful, Starscream is smarter than Megatron. But intelligence is really not what Decepticons care about. All they care about is power.
It already drifts precariously in the sea of time.
Scientific gobbledygook.
The G1 Decepticons are a faction stuck together with duct tape and string. And that duct tape is Megatron. Because you see, without Megatron, they all go at each other's throats. They've done it many times. In Season 2, they decide to just overthrow Megatron and Starscream, and it's really funny.
Well, fooling him was easy.
After doing this, all of them want to be leader, because of course they do. And the Autobots just sit the whole thing out. They don't care.
I never get involved in domestic squabbles.
Hey, why you're...
The first season was pretty basic stuff. Decepticons try to steal the Energon and suck this.
Planet, try!
Autobots try to stop them. Decepticons have a space bridge, you gotta find the space bridge. Decepticons try to take energy from a factory, gotta stop them. And then Megatron fucking teleports Cybertron over the Earth. Remember the climax of Dark of the Moon? That was inspired directly by a 3-part arc called The Ultimate Doom. Megatron did the exact same thing in G1. This apocalyptic level event that capped off the Bayformers movies was episode 11 of Season 1. There are 100 episodes of this. There was an episode with mermaids. Funnily enough, the G1 episode was actually more disastrous than it was in live action. Like, yeah, in Dark of the Moon, Chicago got destroyed and all, but in the cartoon, everything gets destroyed. A planet teleported in front of the Earth. There's horrific and realistic gravitational consequences from this. Worldwide tsunamis, massive earthquakes, volcanoes going off. Why did they make the 80s version scientifically accurate? There were long-lasting ramifications here too. It's an 80s cartoon, so of course they're not gonna say if anyone died, but I kinda suspect that Megatron killed millions of people. Top that, Bayformers. To your average casual person, they might see Transformers and be like, I get it. They're robots that transform. Pretty easy concept to understand. But that's when I take you aside and I say, no, you don't get it. You see, Season 1 is pretty tame. Stop Megatron, save the world, that's the goal. But then we get to Season 2, and the show loses its fucking mind. I'm going to just name off some episode summaries. So, the Dinobots get shipped to Dinosaur Island, a land trapped within a time portal. More time portals open, so the Autobots have to fight cowboys and mammoths. Megatron creates a fake replica of Prime that he remotely controls, all so he can infiltrate the Autobots and convince them to collect some crystals that would explode and kill them all. This leads to the classic Who's Who dilemma, where they figure out which Optimus is real by having a race. Megatron steals the Empire State Building. While trying to get it back, Optimus gets disassembled by the Decepticons and turned into a gator, thus creating Optimus Prime. Starscream gets transported to the days of King Arthur, where he tries to take over the kingdom and rule it as his own. He gets defeated by Merlin, technically making the last night the second time that wizards appear in Transformers. While fighting during a baseball game, the bots are transported to a world where everyone is giant, and they're the size of toys. It has some of the worst animation mistakes I have ever seen in a cartoon. What the fuck went wrong? There's a little electric gremlin named Creamzeek that takes over technology and nobody can stop him. He constantly says his own name like a Pokemon. Optimus gets so sick of Creamzeek, he abandons his moral principles on preserving life and straight up murders him. Even this does not work because you cannot kill Creamzeek. He is probably the most powerful being in the entire canon. Powerglide gets into a toxic romance with a rich girl and has to save her after she gets kidnapped by the Decepticons. They try to read her mind, but they can't because she's just that stupid. This is one of the best episodes. Megatron teams up with the actual Atlantis to take down the federal government. Atlantis is never mentioned again. And that's like 10 episodes. There's so many more. They really played fast and loose with the whole Transformers concept for most of Season 2, throwing everything at the wall to see what stuck. And I'll be honest, I love it for that. Like, you really do not know what you're gonna get from one episode to the next. There is no consistency. One episode might have a sad backstory for a major character, like how Jetfire and Starscream were once friends, or how Omega Supreme was betrayed by the Constructicons after Megatron brainwashed them. And then another episode has Optimus dunking some hoops. This was not a series where the gimmick ever really got old. How could it? The cast was constantly changing. Let's be honest, this was a show made to market toys to children, so new toys, or characters, always found themselves just showing up without further explanation. What are you talking about? Powerglide's always been here. Shut up. Some of the original bots hung around, while others got thrown into the bin. Eventually, even the newer bots started getting thrown out. There's a pattern of introducing new bots, having them be the sole focus for a couple of episodes, and then moving on to something else. This seems like it'd be a bad formula, but it's really not. Every bot gets some spotlight episode or moment to shine. Even Sea Spray. You ever hear of Sea Spray? He's a watercraft Autobot who always talks like he's underwater, even when he isn't.
Can't tell you, Bumblebee, cause then it won't come true.
It's like he's getting constantly waterboarded. He gets a spotlight episode where he has to save a mermaid planet, and he falls in love with a mermaid. He transforms into a mermaid. He still talks like he's getting waterboarded.
How do you like that?
There's Autobots here that just never show up again. Cosmos. Just look at Cosmos. Now, by the end of Season 2, they did kind of go too far with this. It sort of devolved into a carousel of new faces by the end. It didn't help that every other episode they had to introduce a new group into the lore, and each new group had to combine together. You know Devastator? Bunch of smaller bots combining into a big bot? Well, it must have been a big hit because the second half of Season 2 just introduces one new combination team after another. In one episode, Megatron is sick of losing on the ground, so he creates a team of Decepticon cars. So Optimus is like, oh yeah? 2 can play at that game, and he creates Autobots that can fly. This introduces the Decepticon Stunticons and the Autobot aerial bots. Each team, of course, can combine into a giant robot, and they fight each other. But that's not all. Starscream discovers a bunch of military vehicles in Guadalcanal and turns them into bots, thus creating another team, the Combaticons, a team who personally answers to Starscream, their new leader. But none of them like him, so they ignore him immediately.
You're the idiot, Starscream!
Imagine literally creating new friends, giving them life, and they just hate you. What a sad existence this man leads. They also combine into a giant robot. They almost take over Cybertron. So in the span of like 9 episodes, we get introduced to the following characters: Motormaster, Dragstrip, Dead End, Breakdown, Wild Rider, Menasor, Silverbolt, Air Raid, Fireflight, Skydive, Slingshot, Superion, Onslaught, Brawl, Blastoff, Swindle, Vortex, and finally, Bruticus. Each combination bot is basically a new character, so I counted them too. Remember, kids, to collect them all. Bye bye bye. By the end of Season 2, battles which used to be two teams battling it out kind of became two sides sending their giant robots after each other. There were now factions within factions, sub-leaders to the main leaders. Season 2 came to an end, and there were a lot more bots than there had ever been before. So many bots. The last episode is even called Bot. It's about some kid's science project that gets the soul of a Combaticon, starts running amok. The Autobots have to stop it. Some absolute filler waste of time. With that, Season 2 concludes with this scene.
You guys wouldn't have any spare parts lying around that we could use, would you?
I'd say that about wraps it up. Yep.
The very last moment we see all these beloved characters together is them watching these two guys duct tape a girl's mouth and drag her away. Anyway, on to the movie.
One shall stand, one shall fall.
After 2 seasons of silly shenanigans, Transformers the movie hit theaters to the cheers of all the little kids who had grown so accustomed to the family-friendly antics of the Autobots. If you watch all of G1 in order, we end the last episode of Season 2 on a story about a wacky robot causing a ruckus around town. And then we begin the movie with a scene of an entire planet being devoured by a cosmic horror. This series' death count went from 0 to untold billions in 2 minutes flat, all before the opening credits. I love Transformers the movie. It is probably one of the most fascinating films to ever exist. They couldn't just simply make a silly kids' toy movie. Oh no, that would be too easy. They had to just complicate things. This movie is like demolishing a building to build something else in its place. They kinda threw away everything from Season 1 and 2 to make the most transformy Transformers thing that ever existed. This is often thought of as the pinnacle of G1. It's referenced on so many occasions throughout the series, and it probably will be until the end of time. It introduced concepts that would become fundamental to the franchise going forward. It's a movie that became the core memory for an entire generation of children, both for good and bad. And it's a movie that I can say with 100% certainty we will never see the likes of ever again. So before talking about this whole thing, let's do a quick rundown on the plot. Makes things easier for me, makes them easier for you. When I first watched Transformers 1986, I did so years ago before really finishing the series. I watched it to really just see what the movie was like. And hey, I liked it. I was a little confused. There were some characters I didn't exactly know about, except for RC, so I figured that once I finally watched the series, then I would have more context about who these characters were. And that did not happen. Apparently, just like One Piece, there's a time skip. You see, the original series took place in the modern day, which meant 1984 to 1985, and the movie takes place 20 years in the future, in the far-off year of 2005. Ooh. In that span of time, the Autobots have made Earth even more of their home, with the old base of the Ark being replaced by Autobot City. And yeah, Autobot City does turn into a giant robot, we'll get to that. With the time skip, we have a few new faces. And some old faces. Ironhide still hates the Decepticons with all his might. The Decepticons are still up to their silly tricks. Megatron learns Optimus's plans and decides to take action, attacking a ship inbound for Autobot City. This begins our first fight of the movie. Ironhide, Ratchet, Prowl, and Brawn now got a scrap with the Decepticons. I'm sure they'll handle them easily. Yeah. After seeing those longtime fan favorites die horribly, we cut to a tranquil scene of nature. This movie has kind of a tonal problem. Here we meet the only canonical proof that Spike Witwicky ever got laid, his son Daniel, hanging out with his Autobot friend Hot Rod, a new character who will surely be accepted and loved by Transformer fans everywhere. Daniel's sad that his dad is in space instead of spending time with him. Gee, kid, get over it. You're not the center of the world. Sounds like my kids. Pay child support, daddy. No, I'm hanging out with Bumblebee. You know how in the days of the old internet, people would make music montages with anime synced up to Linkin Park songs? Anime music videos, or AMVs they were called. Well, Transformers 1986 has a lot of those. Like, just ingrained into the movie. Scenes with straight 80s rock played in full as the action happens. And that's not even a complaint. More movies should do this. To greet the incoming shuttle, Hot Rod and Daniel go for a drive, thus giving us AMV1. I can't really play copyrighted music, so here's a taste. Wow, thrilling. Sadly though, this sunny day is ruined by the revelation that an aircraft has been hijacked. Man, it really is the 2000s. When people talk about Transformers 1986, they're really just talking about the first 30 minutes or so. A majority of the callbacks you ever see in the future are just calling back to this one battle. And when I mean this one battle, I really just mean anything that Optimus does.
You got the touch. You got the power.
Optimus and Megatron have one final fight. Megatron is defeated. He begs for mercy. And instead of just shooting him Sentinel style, Optimus instead waits for a split second. Just enough time for Hot Rod to help out.
No, you don't, Megatron!
He sure does help out. So now Optimus is dead. I guess he couldn't handle a piece of wood to the stomach. Megatron couldn't handle falling down 3 flights of stairs. In the first 30 minutes of this movie, the leaders of both factions are dead. Optimus flatlines on a hospital bed. Megatron gets jettisoned out of an aircraft and turned into Leonard Nimoy. I love this scene so much. They chuck all the injured bots out of Astro Train to lighten the load in space, and then all clobber each other to find out who's the new leader.
We shall rule. Soundwave superior, Constructicons inferior.
It really just sums up everything the Decepticons are. After drifting through space, Megatron is found by Unicron, and Unicron forces Megatron to do his bidding, turning him into Galvatron. So we lose Frank Welker's classic voice for Leonard Nimoy. Now with a fancy new body, Galvatron shows up to Starscream's wedding and guns down the bride-to-be.
Megatron? Is that you?
Here's a hint.
Straight up dusting him from existence. My god. And then the rest of the movie is really just about defeating Unicron. I'm not gonna keep going through this beat by beat. Like, Unicron wants the Matrix of Leadership, Galvatron tries to get it, the remaining Autobots are scattered and have to reunite, there's some more AMVs, and Hot Rod becomes the new leader of the Autobots, Rodimus Prime. Unicron explodes, the Autobots win, the end. So yeah, the weapons the robots were carrying for 2 seasons actually could cause damage this entire time. Who knew? Not me, apparently. Like, after watching so many of these episodes, you just kind of forget. They might as well have been shooting cat lasers at each other. Then the second Megatron screams. It's like ice water getting splashed in your face. Children entered those theaters in 1986 and walked out as men, forged by the fires of watching Ironhide explode. Canonically, this was the end of G1 Ironhide, and Ratchet, and Brawn, Prowl, Windcharger, and Wheeljack. Wheeljack, the inventor of every Autobot doodad, the creator of the Dinobots, and a core member of the cast, was killed off screen. At least in the American version. Yeah, Wheeljack survived in the Japanese series. Like, he just came back for some reason. I knew some of you were gonna mention that. You were gonna type that comment with your grimy fingers. And then there's Ironhide, the character who survived fighting the Decepticons through thick and thin, and he's taken out with a single shot. These were characters that had entire episodes where they were the major focus. Like that episode where Ironhide retired because he didn't think he was good enough anymore.
I'm retiring from active service, Prime. Very well, if you feel that strongly about it.
And now he's just dead. Oops. Now, I'm not too emotionally devastated that cartoon characters were killed off in a movie that came out a decade before I was born. I'm not screaming to the heavens to avenge old Prowl. I do, however, find this entire situation incredibly funny. In my humble opinion, this is one of the most ballsy moves ever done in American cinema. It's such a unique way to accidentally traumatize children. Like, there's a story of a kid that locked himself in his room for 2 weeks because Optimus died. Kids were crying leaving the theater. To just introduce realistic death into a children's cartoon that had no previous ramifications without warning, and then make those consequences permanent? Oh man, I'm still geeking out about it. We truly will never see anything like this ever again. It's like if the Paw Patrol movie killed the cop dog. Even in films geared towards an older audience, when a beloved character dies, it's usually in a dramatic, more drawn-out way. Like they go out nobly, or perhaps they say goodbye to their friends and family. But in this kid movie, these toys died in a way that was almost disturbingly realistic to how it often is in war. In war, death just happens, suddenly, without honor. It doesn't matter your history or your importance, it can come just like that. Was Transformers the movie actually a deep and symbolic depiction of the horrors of war? Is this a video essay about how this was deep and profound? Of course not. Devastating children was just the unintentional yet hilarious ramification after you kill off characters that apparently kids cared about. A misread of a fan community so gargantuan that it spurred memoirs, articles, and entire books about why this whole thing even happened. Like it's an actual historical tragedy. We gotta get to the center of it. Who's responsible? To answer that, I did some research. Books like I Killed Optimus Prime by the movie's official screenwriter, Ron Friedman. Bumblebee and Me by Bumblebee's voice actor, Dan Gilvezan. This Den of Geek article by Ryan Lambie, and Chris McFeely, who has a whole video detailing the development of the movie script. He goes into way more detail than I ever could, and just watch the video if you want the whole history. All I cared about was who was responsible, who was the culprit, who could it ever possibly be? Hasbro. Of course it was Hasbro, like who else would it be? But I will say Hasbro's only responsible for like 85% of this. So stick with me. Transformers was a series that was just a product of its time. Literally, it was a product that only existed to push a product. By 1985, Optimus Prime, Wheeljack, and the others were old news. They were toys of the original 1984 line, a line that was getting discontinued. So Hasbro created a list that said which characters were now no longer safe. This wasn't necessarily a list that was killing characters off, it was more saying going forward the show didn't really need them anymore. You could do whatever you want. You could just get rid of them, have them go on vacation. As much as Hasbro rightfully gets the blame for all of this, funnily enough, they weren't even the ones that came up with the idea to kill Transformers off. Oh no, that bold idea came from the screenwriter of the film, Ron Friedman. According to the Transformers wiki, Friedman's contribution to the original series was adding additional dialogue. Apparently, he takes great pride in writing Warpath's multiple zingers. So thank you for that. Friedman always intended to kill some characters off for the movie. He says it in his book.
My first big idea about writing The Transformers, the movie, was that I wanted the characters to die in the picture. Die. Is that because I'm a bloodthirsty savage in a permanent state of steroid-induced rage? No. It's because I want audiences to really care and feel something about the story they'll be paying to see.
Death adds consequence. It adds drama. It's interesting to write that the characters are in actual danger now, and not just shooting laser beams at each other. Might make the plot of your film more engaging. Perhaps they might kill off some unimportant Autobots, like Brawl, or Prowl. Trust me, they weren't really doing much. Decepticons would die too, especially those that should have gotten their comeuppance anyway. Just enough peril to let the audience know they're not in Kansas anymore. So Friedman told Hasbro his idea for the movie, and I guess Hasbro really liked the idea. Almost too much. You see, Hasbro never considered having the concept of death in the Transformers property. At least until Friedman told them. Friedman just wanted to add stakes to the story, but it seems like all Hasbro heard was we should kill Optimus Prime.
Unfortunately, I think my presenting the somebody needs to die notion started the corporate thinking that led to Hasbro handing Optimus Prime a death sentence. That was a bell I couldn't unring. But the last thing I wanted to do was kill Optimus Prime.
What was Hasbro's original plan for these toys? We'll never know. Perhaps Optimus would have just walked into the sunset, passed the torch to someone else. Was it Friedman's suggestion that made them realize they could go out with more of a bang? I don't know. In a way, just like the title of his book says, Friedman did kill Optimus Prime. It was just on accident. Also, side note, this book is completely fucking insane. Half of it is written in all caps, like he just left cap locks on. It reads more like a Facebook rant, if anything. He even has an entire chapter, which is a fake interview between him and Optimus Prime, and it just deteriorates into Optimus talking about where he was during World War II. What the fuck am I reading? Why Hasbro thought killing off Optimus was a good idea, we'll never know. Maybe they thought killing off a major toy would force kids to go off and buy the replacement, like the mindless consumers they were. This was clearly a bad idea, and according to Friedman, he protested the decision to kill Optimus, said he didn't want to write Optimus dying, but write Optimus dying he did. It became a part of the earliest draft of the film. It was quite the controversial idea. But not everyone was dragged along kicking and screaming, which leads us to our third culprit, apathy, the greatest sin of all. One thing I love learning about G1's development is really how, at the end of the day, this was just a job for people. Writers got bills to pay, man. That shitty apartment in San Bernardino isn't gonna rent itself. Things that nerds care about, like consistency, or lore, or story blunders, was not at the top of anyone's priority. They took pride in their work, sure, but if the decision was made by Hasbro to kill Optimus Prime, well, you're gonna kill Optimus Prime. You wouldn't have to worry about man-children dissecting your creative decisions on the internet for a few more decades. Despite getting sole credit as writer for the movie, Friedman wasn't the only contributor to this film. There were a lot of writers, apparently, more than were even credited, but the one who was the biggest voice was Flint Dille. Flint Dille was credited as story consultant on the movie. His job was more fleshing out the second draft of the screenplay Friedman had already made, and collaborating with others until we got the final product. Dille just wanted to get the job done, a fact he openly jokes about today. It was a different time. This was a show for children. A fan's greatest input to the writers would be the single digit they contributed to the Nielsen ratings. So when Dille had gotten the script that killed Optimus off, he just went with it. Who cares? You should have seen the stuff they cut out of the movie. What we got was tame. In the original storyboards, Brawn got split in half after getting shot. Ultra Magnus was going to be drawn and quartered. Dille was gonna end the movie with, quote, the charge of the Light Brigade, where the entire 1984 line would die off in a single final push, leaving only the new toys being the ones left alive. These guys were kind of just writing action that they thought would be interesting, regardless of whether children were going to be watching it or not. They were going all out, and I'm gonna be honest, I love that. They just made what they thought would be cool, and Hasbro certainly didn't understand what they were doing. The idea that kids would think of these toys as alive characters was not really considered by Hasbro, because that never really existed before. Or at least if kids were attached to some cartoon characters, they weren't gunned down right in front of them. Imagine if the Smurfs had been carpet bombed as a finale. Probably wouldn't have gone over too well with ages 7 and under. This was a TV show that was able to finally leave TV restrictions. In a way, G1 was finally able to show what it was always supposed to be, even if it kind of retconned the canon of the show. Here's the thing about introducing death into G1 Transformers. The last 2 seasons kind of now make absolutely no sense. Wow, what a shock, the cartoon that had cowboys coming out of a time portal has inconsistencies, mind-blowing information. Think about every battle, every fight, every exchange of gunfire. 0 casualties. Lasers just bounce off. Explosions do nothing. This is how things were for 40-ish episodes. Then we get to the movie. and a single laser beam is fatal. It's such a drastic change, it kind of forces me to ask a question. Did any of this actually happen? Like in the canon, did Megatron fall down a hill, get lit up by Optimus, and then run away? What about that time Laserbeak literally shot inside Optimus, and he exploded, but still managed to survive? Or who could forget when Optimus was disassembled piece by piece and rearranged into a crocodile? If the movie is canon just like the show, wouldn't they have died in all of these situations? Is the show even canon compared to the movie? Did these silly situations just never happen? Did they happen differently? Maybe we just need to accept that this and this did still happen, just on a chronological timeline. Somehow the bots fought each other for millions of years without ever dealing a fatal blow. It's like a fighting game where both sides have infinite health. And then everything changes because in 2005, Megatron finally said the word die. Alright, so I guess now in the movie, they can die. It turns out you just can't put bots back together like they did in the TV show. Like in the movie, Ultra Magnus doesn't get drawn and quartered, but he does get gunned down by the Decepticons. It's brutal. He straight up explodes. Had this been the show, he probably would have survived, just simply put back together. But as the movie establishes, bots just can't be put back together. Then they put Ultra Magnus back together. So, all the other bots can be shot once and fucking die. Optimus can be shot a few times and slowly flatline on a hospital bed, and there's nothing anyone can do. But Ultra Magnus, the brand new toy, can explode into pieces, be dead for hours, and then be put back together. So anyway, the music's pretty good. At the end of the day, Transformers the movie isn't about life or death. It's not about the story. Hell, it's not even about the transforming robots. At the end of the day, Transformers the movie remembers what's really important. Killer 80s rock ballads. That's not a joke. They put more effort into the soundtrack than the actual story. This movie is like Halo 3, where 80% of the plot is carried by the music. That's a compliment. I've seen some complain that Transformers the movie is bad because it's just a music video. But to me, that's like complaining that a pizza is covered in cheese and baked in an oven. Yeah, that's why I like it. I even like Dare to Be Stupid. You can't change my opinion on this. I like that Weird Al is in this movie. You have nothing to threaten me with. Music is such a core aspect to this film, it's actually kind of hard for me to talk about it. Because how do I show you? YouTube would kill me. The original series didn't have the best animation. It was working with a cartoon TV budget in the 80s. What'd you expect? It's honestly a miracle if colors were even in the right place. I don't think there's a single episode without an animation error. A lot of times characters are speaking with the wrong voices. Sometimes animation cells just disappear. Things are drawn poorly, or just look wonky. It has a certain level of jank you just come to appreciate over time. Like a 95 Chevy Silverado on its last legs. Who animated this? Ah, that makes sense. Yeah, the first 2 seasons of Transformers were animated by Toei. The same Toei that animated Dragon Ball, One Piece, and who could forget. You see, back in the 80s, Toei animated some American cartoons, like G.I. Joe and TMNT. Before Americans began outsourcing animation to Korea, they used Japan instead. This lasted for like a decade until Toei just gave up on doing Western properties. Guess they found something more profitable. Thing is though, Toei wasn't the only studio for Season 2. For what I'm assuming was budget and scheduling reasons, some episodes were done by other studios. A few we know were done by a Korean studio, but other episodes are completely uncredited. We have no idea who animated these. Some episodes were done by a mysterious studio just lost to time. Judging by the dip in quality, it was probably some budget studio overseas that could just whip these things out before the deadline, resulting in far more animation mistakes than usual, and sometimes just downright broken episodes. Really, even under Toei, the animation was stretched to its limits. Season 2 was 49 episodes between September 1985 and January 1986. That is insane. Most network sitcoms don't even do that. Today, there's a whole discussion about the working conditions for animators, especially in Japan and Korea, but back then, there was just no consideration. I cannot imagine what it was like. God, those poor animators must have been expended faster than your average Imperial Guardsman. Sure, Toei might not have been working on every single episode for Season 2, but at the same time, they were still animating the Transformers movie. And despite the crunch and the insane production schedule, I have to say, they knocked it out of the park. Transformers the movie looks incredible. It's probably the greatest jump in quality from a TV show to film. Transformers the movie was such a leap in quality, though, that this is what people think of when they think of G1. The bold color choices, the simple robot designs that are still animated fluidly. Hell, just Unicron himself. I wouldn't wish animating Unicron on my own worst enemy. He was already a pain to draw for this dumb video because of that dumb ring. I can't imagine them doing this shot of him flying past the camera. No wonder they used it twice. I just appreciate the level of work that went into a film that was ultimately about Orson Welles devouring an entire planet. Orson Welles, filmmaking legend, director and writer of quote-unquote the greatest film of all time, Citizen Kane. He gaslit an entire nation into thinking aliens were attacking, and his work has gone on to inspire generations. Also, his very last role was voicing a Transformer. Or at least it was a second to last according to IMDb. I don't give a shit. He died like a week later after voicing Unicron. That's what I'm getting at.
I have summoned you here for a purpose. Nobody summons Megatron. Then it pleases me to be the first.
This man born during the First World War, who made a movie critiquing William Randolph Hearst, the father of yellow journalism, a man who is said to have created the first modern film, voiced the giant planet in Transformers the movie. How the hell did they manage to get Orson Welles? Quite easily, it seems. You see, Orson Welles desperately needed money. Near the end of his life, he was like hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. By the 80s, the creator of the greatest film of all time was morbidly obese and doing commercial voice readings just to pay for the groceries. That's according to his own biography. There's rumors that Welles was bitter about doing voice work for a toy commercial. But according to actor and former friend of Welles, Peter Bogdanovich, in a Reddit AMA, 10 years ago by the way, Welles apparently wasn't bitter at all. I don't think he cared. It was literally one morning of voice work. That was it. I spent more time voicing this video than Welles spent voicing Unicron. The man was doing wine commercials, for God's sakes.
Ah, the French champagne.
I think a major role in a movie was a step up.
You know what I did this morning? I played the voice of a toy. Some terrible robot toys from Japan that change from one thing to another. The Japanese have funded a full-length animated cartoon about the doings of these toys, which is all bad outer space stuff. I play a planet. I menace somebody called something or other. Then I'm destroyed. I plan to destroy whomever it is thwarted, and I tear myself apart on the screen.
That was in the epilogue of his biography. The epilogue of the Orson Welles story is him telling his biographer that he played Unicron.
Now, you shall witness its dismemberment.
It's kind of crazy. Every single interview regarding people who have worked with Orson Welles is just them joking about how fat he was. Ron Friedman in his book called him the size of a planet. Voice director Michael McConaughey said the irony of Welles playing a planet-sized eating machine wasn't lost on anyone. If I did voice work and the last people I worked with shit-talked me afterward, I'd reincarnate as Unicron and devour Hollywood myself. Oh yeah, Unicron. What is there to say? Unicron is Unicron. He's really not much of a character. He's just a force of nature that wants the film's MacGuffin. I'd say one of the things the movie kind of fails at is this sense of scale for Unicron. That's kind of true in fashion for the whole series. Scale goes all over the place. It's really bad. And here is no different. His size changes a lot. Like, Unicron's the size of an entire planet, right? But when they exit his eye, they shatter his entire eye. I might be wrong, but according to scaling, everyone here should be the size of mountains. Oh well, don't think about it. He's a cool design. That's all that matters. He devours entire civilizations with a cartoonish crunch. Unicron is just Robot Galactus. He even sends out his minions to do the actual fighting. And one of those loyal minions is now Megatron, who got chucked out the window the second he was useless. After getting zapped by Unicron's high beams, Megatron was reborn as Galvatron. Now voiced by our second celebrity, Leonard Nimoy, known for being in the classic The Ballad of Bilbo Baggins. Oh, Galvatron. I love classic Megatron, of course, but nothing beats Galvatron's introduction. Starscream finally did it. He overthrew Megatron. He's on top of the world. How is he supposed to know a giant planet would give his boss an upgrade? Starscream was leader of the Decepticons for a full 28 seconds. This is the best death in the movie, by the way. This was also Galvatron's coolest moment. It's all downhill from here. Galvatron is a suitable threat throughout the movie. He does kill Magnus, after all. He gains the Matrix of Leadership, though he can't use it. It's a neat dynamic having a minion who so clearly wants to kill his master, but it never works. That Megatron pride is still alive and well in Galvatron, though it doesn't do him much good. It wasn't his fault that the MacGuffin wanted to choose the Autobot with the raddest color scheme. Okay, let's talk about Hot Rod. Hot Rod. Hot Rod. No figure causes more dismay and discussion than good old Hot Rod / Rodimus Prime. Hot Rod, according to Friedman, is that character that goes on a classic hero's journey. He starts off as a smartass kid, undergoes tribulations, learns from that experience, and eventually becomes the hero. There's also some chosen one elements going on here. Man, it sure would have been nice if the Matrix let Ultra Magnus know he wasn't worthy. Guess he had to find out the hard way. The Matrix of Leadership chose Hot Rod instead, as the new leader of the Autobots, transforming him at the end of the movie into Rodimus Prime. The whole next season would now be about the adventures of Rodimus and these new Autobots.
What's he talking about?
We're gonna get killed.
I'm sure kids were going to love seeing more of this character. This shouldn't be too surprising, but people aren't going to accept a replacement character with open arms immediately after seeing the old one get killed. Especially if that replacement character debatably caused Optimus's death.
Out of the way, Hot Rod!
Oops. So let's break the scene down. Optimus beats Megatron, Megatron begs for mercy, Optimus pauses shooting to question Megatron. This was a distraction though, as Megatron reaches for a gun. Hot Rod notices this and pounces on Megatron to stop him. Optimus can't get a clean shot, and after Megatron wrestles Hot Rod off, he shoots Optimus. Gonna be real with you, doesn't look too good for old Hot Rod here. If he didn't get in the way, then none of this would have happened. I mean, you could argue that Optimus should have just unloaded into Megatron without question. He really shouldn't have wasted time like that, and it led to the situation getting out of hand. The thing is though, Hot Rod still messed up. That isn't even my opinion. That was the intended purpose of Ron Friedman. Hot Rod was meant to be racked with guilt for making this mistake. A classic hero's journey dilemma for him to move past and grow from. Add some depth to this next generation leader. That's neat and all from a writing perspective, and it certainly adds complexity to the character. But is that really needed for a show intended for children? And I don't mean children can't understand complex emotions. I'm just saying they're not gonna like the new guy if they think he killed Optimus Prime. That's gonna be a problem when you're trying to sell a toy.
Me, Grimlock, rescue you!
You must be kidding.
You can't just talk about the movie without giving context on season 1 and 2. You also can't just end with the movie. because Transformers the movie was in a lot of ways just the start, the grand pilot for Season 3. And Season 3 was in a lot of ways not really a Season 3 at all. Had this series been released today, it might have been called a spin-off. This is not the same show as Season 2. Much of the original cast, both Autobots and Decepticons, were gone, replaced with brand new characters that continued the fight. Whatever storyline existed in those first 2 seasons ended with the movie. Optimus and Megatron were dead. The Decepticons lost the war. So, Season 3 begins with not only a 20-year time skip, but an entirely new status quo, with the Autobots fully in control of Cybertron. This is like the Zeta Gundam to the original Mobile Suit. If you're not a Gundam fan, I swear that metaphor makes sense. Basically, some familiar faces are still here, Char is mucking about, but everything is different. There's a time skip where our brown-haired protagonist has become a family man, and also like half the episodes are in space. Yeah, gone are the days of really fighting on Earth. Now every episode is on a different planet, Cybertron, or just a barren rock. Now most backdrops are dark skies or alien worlds. Things are kind of off. For one, yeah, Optimus was gone. What a shock. Replaced now with Rodimus leading the next generation. But so too were the original showrunners. Flint Dille, the story consultant of the movie, took over as one of this season's story editors, alongside comic writer Marv Wolfman, who created the Teen Titans, and Steve Gerber, who created Howard the Duck. Now, I have no evidence for any of this, I wasn't in the studio, but I'm pretty sure the tonal change entirely came from these three, especially Dille. If you watch these episodes in order, you know what I'm talking about. There's a shift in tone. There are still goofy moments, sure, yet everything feels a little more bitter. Not solemn, it's not like the tone is depressing or dark. I wouldn't even call it darker or edgier. It's not like this is the Snyderverse. These adventures aren't any more dangerous than they were in Season 1 or 2, but it feels like everyone's reactions to these situations is now different. It's kind of a crazy shift, because we go from happy-go-lucky robot adventures where nobody really thinks about what's going on, to characters being more self-aware, introspective. I don't know how else to describe this. Like, a typical Season 1 episode would have Megatron activating the Googleplex Annihilator or something, and the Autobots are like, "We'll stop you, Decepticons," and they fight without a second thought. Then Season 3 would have Galvatron do the same thing, and the Autobots are like, "Ah, fuck, this guy again." Maybe it's because even the Autobots don't take the Decepticons seriously anymore. They are kind of just there, rebuilding after losing the war. They've added some new marketable characters to their ranks, of course, mainly coming in shapes of various animals.
Decepticons fight everybody!
I love the Predacons and this dumb Godzilla-looking idiot. At least they're unique looking, unlike, others. The Decepticons are now controlled by Galvatron's team. They all look the same, so it's kinda hard to keep track of who's who. They just feel like a downgrade of the original squad of goobers. Cyclonus is probably the best of all of them. That includes Galvatron. Remember the dry and calculating tone of Leonard Nimoy? Galvatron really seemed like an upgrade of Megatron as a force to be reckoned with. Remember when I said him shooting Starscream was the top of the mountain for his character? Well, that's because it was. At the start of Season 3, we learned that Galvatron survived flying out of Unicron's head, and he crash-landed on some alien planet. He's still alive! Technically. He's a lot different. I don't know if it was either bonking his head or from the aftermath of Unicron's mind control, but for some reason now, Galvatron is just insane. Not like insane as a metaphor for just how evil he is, like, oh man, Megatron's drilling into the planet, what a madman. I mean, Galvatron has actual mental issues that are detrimental to him and his friends. He's paranoid, constantly having episodes. Poor Cyclonus has to be the caretaker to his insane uncle. It gets so bad, his own team sends him to a therapist, on the therapist planet.
Unzip me! It's all coming back!
Hell, since they couldn't have Leonard Nimoy anymore, he even resorted to sounding kinda like Megatron again, with Frank Welker returning to voice him.
Reunite the Decepticons and raise our empire
And I guess Frank Welker just decided to make him as funny as possible.
But he's going to learn!
Like a bizarre mix of Megatron and Starscream. While the Decepticons show up from time to time to be a threat, they aren't the only threat. Remember the Quintessons? Well, they were the OCs of Flint Dille, imagined as the original overlords of the Transformers in a script for the movie that was eventually scrapped. Yet, now in many ways, in charge of Season 3, Flint Dille could do whatever he wanted. You better believe those Quintessons were now everywhere. In Season 3 alone, they're prevalent in at least 11 episodes, a third of the season. We learned that the Quintessons were the original overlords of the Transformers. Just like in the rejected script, he just went with it anyway. This was a piece of lore that remained forever in the series canon. And as much as I'm making fun of him adding his own OC, I love the addition of the Quintessons. To have another alien race in this universe that still holds an eternal grudge against all Transformers is a fascinating idea. And their schemes throughout the season are really just to fuck over everyone. They try to sell doomsday devices to both sides in a war. They try to brainwash everyone in the galaxy to want to kill each other. And who could forget the episode where they wanted to destroy Space Japan? Yeah, there's Space Japan, don't worry about it. Really, the Quintessons, or Quints, as everyone calls them as an actual in-universe slur, are just behind everything. They shot JFK. Wake up, people. Wake up. Season 3 really opens up the universe. While the last two seasons were just about the Autobots dealing with Decepticon shenanigans, now it's the Autobots dealing with everyone's shenanigans. And they look sick and tired of it. And each episode, the bots kind of just visit another world that has a unique attribute to solve whatever problem it has. There's a planet of pacifists that get taken over by Decepticons because they're just that weak. There's a planet where everyone sings like they're in an opera. There's Space Japan. Is this just Star Trek? Not a lot of people like Season 3. And look, I get it. The animation is pretty bad. It was outsourced to Korea, and I'm pretty sure the Philippines. There were many production issues, and the episodes themselves weren't the best written. Even with all those issues, I still think there was another reason, other than the most obvious one. The reason I think a lot of 80s kids didn't like Season 3 that much, and so many regard it as the weakest season, is really because it's just Star Trek, with Transformers, dealing with alien issues, facing off against an existential threat. Hell, Spike and his family even represent Earth now on the galactic stage. Yeah, since I brought up Spike, Spike is like the coolest space guy ever now.
I may be going down, but you're coming with me!
He's like Flash Gordon. Good for him. All Sam got was dying off screen. Anyway, the galaxy and its various antics are the main focus of Season 3. To every other alien species, Transformers aren't even particularly special. They're just normal-sized robots. Aliens are just huge. Huge to humans, at least. Or humans are just really, really small. As an adult who likes Star Trek, I find all this world building pretty interesting. A set of limited characters dealing with new situations. Because unlike the last few seasons, the cast for Season 3 is pretty limited. Which is nice, honestly. We get to flesh out these new Autobots over a longer period of time instead of just switching them out for someone else. And that's something I could easily see kids getting bored of. If you watch a show called Transformers, you're expecting the main plot to revolve around Transformers. Even if all of this had been different, even if the aesthetic was as bright as Season 2, even if every episode still focused on the Autobots and Decepticons, Season 3 was still kind of doomed from the start. All because nobody liked Rodimus Prime. Rodimus Prime. Rodimus Prime. Man, people hated Rodimus Prime. A lot still do. At his worst, he's a loser who killed Optimus Prime. At his best, he's a mistake who got reversed. That word, mistake, is used a lot for Rodimus. Misstep, misfire, misinput.
It was a misinput, calm down! You calm the fuck down!
He's not Optimus, and for some, that already is enough to hate him. But even if he acted just like Optimus, I don't think he ever would have caught on, just because of how he was introduced. If you want the audience to care about a character, this is really the worst way to do it. It set him up for failure. They thought their main demographic of 8-year-olds would go along with this, and shockingly, they didn't. Even to this day, Flint Dille still gets shit for Rodimus Prime.
When season 3 started, I just wondered why the decision was made instead of doing, say, like a nice growth arc for Rodimus Prime, that he was just made into kind of a pathetic leader.
A lot of fans dislike Rodimus, and I am not one of them. I like Rodimus Prime. Yeah, I said it. Okay, look, killing Optimus off was a mistake. I'm not denying that. But just because I dislike that idea, doesn't mean I dislike his replacement.
Anyway, it's not a new tie, right?
Granted, I also have the hindsight of 40 years. I already know Optimus is coming back, and he'll be in like 20 different shows. This means nothing to me. For me, as an adult watching this, Rodimus is really just an interesting change of pace. He works for me because he isn't Optimus. He isn't Optimus at all. Pre-movie Optimus was, you know, optimistic. The perfect leader who got the job done. Rodimus, meanwhile, is just kind of dead inside. Honestly, he's half the reason the show feels so different in season 3.
And no matter what happens, hold your positions!
He's fed up with whatever situation he gets thrown into. Like, even he knows how long this series has been going.
This has been going on for a few dozen millennia now, and I don't see it changing, do you?
It's almost surreal to have a character like this in this series. One who is very blunt and dry. He really doesn't act like a leader.
Well, basically you'll have two choices, suffocate or smother. Or maybe we can dock at that, well, whatever, up ahead.
Like, at heart, he's still just Hot Rod. One of the guys. The sibling that had to take control after the death of a parent. And while to some that's what makes them hate Rodimus, to me that's what makes him work so well. He's just winging it. As an adult, Rodimus is hilarious. He has no filter. His personality isn't one of a noble prime, but he also wants to be a noble prime. He wants to one day even be a fraction of the leader that Optimus was. If Imposter Syndrome was a character, it would be Rodimus. Half the time he wonders if he's even cut out for this. He's full of self-doubt. His own Autobots doubt him. And he wonders all the time if Optimus had the same struggles. That's kind of the theme throughout Season 3. Becoming a leader is something you learn through trial and error. Not everyone is perfect with it at first. Not even Optimus, as we come to learn. With each episode, though, Rodimus learns a little more, leaning on his small group of friends for advice. Hell, if we want to go back to the Star Trek analogy, Rodimus is really just Captain Kirk. Despite the popular idea that Kirk is just this funny womanizer, or basically just William Shatner, Kirk in the original series had a lot of contemplative and stressful moments. He knew that the lives of his crew hung in the balance from his decisions. He'd often heed the advice of others like Spock or McCoy. And really, now that I think about it, Kup is basically Rodimus's McCoy. Rodimus has a surprisingly complex and subtle character for an 80s cartoon. Almost too subtle. Like, as an adult, I get where they're going with him, but to a kid, all they see is a leader who isn't Optimus, and all he does is complain. So he's just a worse Optimus. Maybe one day he would have been like Optimus, but that day would never come. Rodimus really was just doomed from the start. The way Optimus was killed disappointed kids and pissed off parents. Hasbro was flooded with letters after the movie's release. Angry parents telling them how much the movie upset their child. By the time of Season 3, those Hasbro execs realized how much they fucked up. They killed their golden goose. There was truly only one thing they could do to satiate an angry audience. They had to bring Optimus back. So spoilers, Optimus comes back. Comes back as a zombie, that is, his disheveled corpse freaking out both characters on screen and the children at home. Just like they didn't know how much Optimus dying would devastate children. According to interviews from the team, they didn't realize how much bringing him back as a zombie would rub salt into the wound.
But is this really the end of Optimus Prime? Find out in tomorrow's exciting episode, The Return of Optimus Prime.
They said in the 8th episode that he was coming back, and then he didn't until the end of the season. At a certain point, I'm wondering if they're just messing with kids for fun. I wonder if little Timmy cried in his room for 2 more weeks. By the end of Season 3, they finally bring Optimus back to life. How did they get his body after it apparently exploded in the middle of space during the zombie episode? He's back, okay? You little snot-nosed brats got what you wanted. Optimus retakes the matrix of leadership, becomes the leader of the Autobots again, and everyone just moves on like nothing ever happened. Like that episode with Principal Skinner we all just ignore. You know the one. At least you can say that canonically G1 Optimus' story did not end on a hospital bed. Good way to wrap up the series on a positive note. Now they can go off and do dumb headmaster shit. At the same time, and this feels dumb to say, I kind of feel bad for Rodimus. Like, he's not real, it's not like this decision put him out on the street or anything. He's a fictional character, so he doesn't have any real feelings. I guess, in the show, he was actually kind of excited to stop being a Prime. He was more than happy to give up the Matrix, actually. Turns out he really just wanted to go back to being Hot Rod. It's all kind of weird, in retrospect. So many episodes were about Rodimus not feeling like he was up to the task. Whole plotlines culminating in him becoming more of a leader. I guess in the end, he was right to self-doubt. He really never could have been as good of a Prime as Optimus. I guess he just really didn't even want the job. Props to the haters. It's kind of sad, in a way. This character that wondered if he was ever good enough just got it confirmed in the actual canon that he wasn't. This was a character arc I'm sure the writers never intended to actually backtrack. They certainly didn't expect a barrage of angry letters from parents. Optimus came back and struck Rodimus down, and I guess everyone cheered. He was really just a victim of strange executive decisions and odd writing choices. His character is forever cemented by the franchise as just a mistake. Something that had to be corrected. As nice as it is that Optimus came back, making Rodimus an oops that had to be corrected really just weakened an already weak Season 3, cementing it as the runt of G1. All those moments of Rodimus doubting or learning from experience now just feel useless, like wastes of time. He was really just keeping the seat warm until Optimus came back. Even then, I don't know if Optimus truly did come back. Like, he did literally come back to life in Season 3, but in my opinion, he doesn't feel like the same Optimus, like ever again. For the rest of the franchise, Optimus Prime changed after his death, both in how he was written and how he was perceived. You know the saying, you don't know what you have until it's gone? Well, what happens when that thing comes back? You cherish it more. Before his death, Optimus Prime was almost goofy, like a lot of Season 1 and 2. They weren't worried about putting Optimus in silly situations, making him look dumb. He would cheer just as stupidly as everyone else. He might get bamboozled by Megatron's obvious trick. He would race an obvious duplicate of himself just to prove to everyone else that he was the real Optimus. Like going faster would prove anything. He wasn't perfect. That's my point. He wasn't even that important, at least to Hasbro. That was, until he died. After Optimus's death, he wasn't just Optimus Prime anymore. He was Optimus Prime. He was the most important Autobot ever, and don't you forget it. He acted differently, more stoic, almost somber, more in line to the future serious Optimus we would know. Like the writers now understood how important Optimus was, and all the characters knew too. It's not like this is necessarily a bad thing. It's not like he changed that much, but it's just different. Maybe I'm just being overly analytical. He was really just back for 6 episodes. Technically there are 4 seasons, but really that 4th season isn't real. They'll call it a 4th season, but it's actually like a 4-episode special. It's about the Headmasters. Ooh. The Headmasters were pretty much Transformers' version of Mecha. It was a lot bigger in Japan.
Now I want you to see this. How come you missed me? This has been my way of doing things. I fight the way soldiers should.
Japanese Transformers is a whole other thing. Wheeljack never died. Prowl's still alive, or at least a version of Prowl. This Prowl's from another universe. There's a whole Japanese Transformers multiverse. I went off this ride, please stop. In America, though, this is how G1 was kind of sputtering out. Headmasters wasn't much of a hit. The toy line was selling less every year. So at a certain point, Hasbro called it quits. In America, Transformers G1 came to an end. Though it did end on a high note. In the very last episode, Cybertron is reawakened. After millions of years of war, the planet receives enough energy from the sun to be turned back on. The whole planet turns gold, Cybertron's original color. I love that Cybertron is actually meant to be warm and bright instead of the dull and gray we think of it as. Ultimately, the planet and the Transformers are saved all because of Spike. The human that they saved at the start of the series gets to repay the favor. So, G1 and the end of the series ends with Optimus Prime alive, the Autobots winning the war, and Cybertron starting a new golden age. Might have had a rocky path along the way, but at least it stuck the landing. Honestly, that's better than most shows these days. Here's the thing. I've been talking about the Transformers movie in some way or another for like an hour or so. I've told you everything. Everything, except that it was a box office bomb. Yeah, the first Transformers movie, the one referenced everywhere in the franchise, came in 14th on opening weekend. Eventually, it'd become a cult classic. Ironically, despite this film being made for the big screen, most people still only watched it at home. Think about that. At the height of G1's popularity, when toy sales were the largest, when it was a phenomenon for a certain age demographic, the movie made absolutely no impact. It didn't even make a ripple in the water. The damn pebble phased through the surface like the collision was turned off. Just kind of gives perspective on this entire thing. Maybe it's because Transformers G1 was just that wacky robot show. It's disjointed. Characters appear and disappear at whim, plot holes are abound, but at the same time, I love it. I love when a series goes absolutely insane with its ideas. I like that they try something new even if it doesn't work. I've become more of a Transformers fan watching this broken cartoon from the 80s than I ever did watching the Bayformer films. Ironically, the cartoon has made me enjoy the Bayformer films more, to a certain extent. Like, this scene in 2007 is straight out of G1. I 100% could see Season 2 Optimus saying, "My bad."
Oh, no! Sorry, my bad.
Despite having some of the highest grossing films of all time, Transformers is ultimately a series meant for TV. Its stories work best in 30-minute intervals. In many ways, just like Star Trek. Don't go in expecting the best, or expecting the worst. Really just go in not expecting anything. Trust me, you'll be surprised by something eventually. A character you've never heard of might become your favorite. An episode concept might spark your imagination. Or you might see something so stupid, you can't help but laugh. Honestly, it's gonna be mostly that. Most importantly though, watch it with the mindset of being in the 80s. Because at one point, this was probably the coolest thing in the world for some kid in 1984. Maybe, if you remove your modern lens, you might see that perhaps with G1, there's more to it than meets the eye. No, wait, don't!
And just what does your doohickey do?